You know that feeling, right? You say something in a meeting and for the rest of the day you just keep replaying it, absolutely convinced you sounded like a complete idiot. Or maybe you trip on the sidewalk and you can just feel 100 pairs of eyes on you. Well, that feeling that you're constantly being watched and judged and kind of recorded, it's a full-time job. Today, we're going to dismantle that feeling. We're going to use a little bit of science to hand you your resignation papers. So, let's get into it.
This quote, man, this just nails it, doesn't it? We pour so much energy into putting on this show, curating every little move for an audience that, as we're about to find out, probably didn't even buy a ticket. This isn't just being shy. This is a full-blown psychological occupation. Just think about that for a second. Every single morning, you walk into your own private courtroom in your head, and you imagine this invisible panel of judges. Could be your coworkers, strangers on the street, maybe even people from your past. And you filter every single thing you do through what you think their verdict is going to be. It's this crazy trial where you're the defendant, the prosecutor, and the judge all at once.
Okay, but here's the question that changes everything. What if that burning hot spotlight you feel, the one that seems to catch every little mistake and awkward pause, what if it isn't even real? What if you're the one in the lighting booth, pointing it directly at yourself? And believe it or not, there's a name for this. It's called the spotlight effect, a term that comes from social psychologist Thomas Gilovich. And the important thing to get is that it's not some personal failing. It's a predictable cognitive bias, basically a glitch in our social software that makes us feel like the center of a universe that's, well, barely paying attention.
Now here's what's truly wild about this. It's the sheer scale of our miscalculation. I mean, we're not just a little bit off here. The gap between what we think is happening and what's actually happening is enormous. And Gilovich, he designed this brilliant and kind of funny experiment to prove it. It's honestly as simple as it sounds. He had college students put on what was, at the time considered a deeply, deeply uncool t-shirt, one with Barry Manilow's face on it, and then had them just walk into a room full of other students. The whole point was to see how many people would actually notice this mortifying fashion choice.
And the results are just staggering. The students wearing the shirt absolutely swimming in their own embarrassment, they guessed that half the room noticed it, 50%. But the reality? Only about a quarter of the people in that room actually did. They overestimated by double. Why? Well, because most people in the room were just lost in their own little world, just filling out a form or whatever.
Let's just isolate that number for a second, because it is so important. 2 times. They thought twice as many people were paying attention to them as actually were. And this just perfectly illustrates the whole thing. Your internal feeling of embarrassment feels so vivid, so real, it just seems impossible that other people aren't seeing it too. But they're not.
So why does our brain do this to us? Well, it's a little mental shortcut called anchoring and adjustment. Your brain needs a starting point, an anchor, to try and guess what other people are thinking. And what's the most obvious anchor it can find? Your own intense 100-proof awareness of yourself. It starts there at 100%, and then it tries to adjust down, but it just never adjusts down far enough.
And this rabbit hole goes even deeper. It's not just about what we wear or a stumble on the sidewalk. It's about what we feel. And this leads us to something called the illusion of transparency. It's the rock-solid belief that your internal state, your anxiety, your nervousness, your sheer panic is just written all over your face for everyone to read like a book.
This quote really captures the tragedy of it all. It's about the immense waste of this illusion. You're trying with all your might to hide your nervousness during a presentation, but the truth is, most people can't see it anyway. Study after study shows that our inner turmoil is way more invisible than we think. You're basically fighting a ghost.
And here it is. This is the part that is both kind of disturbing and also incredibly freeing. The reason they don't notice the spotlight on you is because they are blinded by their own. The person you think is judging you for stumbling, they're simultaneously convinced that you just noticed how nervously they were sitting. See, the social world isn't a single stage with you in the middle. It's a whole auditorium full of people, and every single one of them is on their own private stage, starring in their own private catastrophe.
So what's the real cost here? What's the price we pay for all this? In a word, self-erasure. Every time you don't speak up, or you don't try that new thing, or you don't wear what you really want to wear because of that imaginary audience, you are shrinking your own life. Research on this is clear. Our deepest regrets aren't about the things we failed at. They're about our inactions, all the things we never even did out of fear.
And this brings us to the most radical, maybe the hardest idea of all. We overestimate how much others notice us because, on some deep level, we kind of need to believe we're that important. So to let go of the spotlight means you have to accept a harder but way more liberating truth. You're just not the center of everyone's world. And that, right there, is the beginning of real freedom.
So how do we get there? How do we actually break free? Well, it happens through repeated, deliberate contact with that fear. First, you just have to acknowledge that the spotlight is an illusion. Second, you have to act before your internal judges can reach a verdict and shut you down. Third, you got to attempt the thing even while you feel anxious. And fourth, and this is the magic part, you will discover time and time again that the catastrophe you were so afraid of, it never shows up.
And when you really truly let that sink in, you realize the cage was never locked. The audience was never really watching that closely, which means that the freedom you were looking for, it was there all along. So I'll just leave you with this question. Knowing that the jury was never really there, that the audience was probably just looking at their phones, and that the spotlight was nothing more than a trick of your own mind, what are you going to do with that freedom? What will you do now?